Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the video podcast, the Cornhole Insider podcast. Joel Karnick here. On the bottom there, Mr. Al Baghdadi. How you doing,
Good
Al?
evening.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good to see you. We've got Mr. Tyler Earls, who is an ACL director with us, and we're going to talk all things Worlds with ACL and kind of ACO a little bit, as I'm more familiar with that, and kind of compare those. So Tyler, I was kind of hoping that you maybe would be like right outside the Corn Palace in Mitchell. That's what Mitchell's known for, but nonetheless, good to have you here.
Well, I could step out and show you right out my door, so it's probably only like a block away. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad to be here, you guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Tyler. You're an ACL director, like I said, for the Mid-North Conference, and you were at ACL Worlds last year, so you have a real good idea of what's going to happen coming up the first week in August in South Carolina, and I will be attending ACO Worlds in Branson the last weekend of July. They're actually back to back, so we're going to inform you guys kind of on what happens there, and how really the motto is with the ACL, anybody can play, anybody can win, and that's really, I think, the philosophy with both organizations, Tyler. When it comes to these worlds, there's little things you got to do here and there, get signed up, obviously, and stuff. But I mean, for the most part, people can show up and they can, they can do some pretty special things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Worlds for ACL starts July 29th, and then we'll go to the August 7th for this year. The August 29th, 30th, and August 1st. I think it's 31st, either way. But that first weekend, they're doing something new with the USA Cornhole, which is kind of mixed between the ACL and USA. They're doing something cool with that. That's something new I have not been a part of, but I am kind of seeing more about it. I don't have any great answers for that one, but I do have a lot for the ACL Worlds wise.
Yeah, but the USA is kind of a part of an Olympic qualifying. Is that kind of the first step to that? Is that right?
Yeah, so like I know there's always been a lot of talks of trying to get Olympic sport for then cornhole to transition both worlds. And that I believe is what they're trying to do, is they're trying to make it Olympic sport, and the best way for them to do that would be to do it USA style.
Okay, so that'll be that first few days, and then they'll dig in that first full week of August. So let's talk about category by category. Let's cover singles first of all, and in the ACL, of course, they've got where they have the pros, the 256 with the pros, but there are other divisions where people can sign up and show up, whether they have or haven't played with the ACL before, right?
Correct. So as of right now, I think it opened up just recently. So like how they're doing it for signups wise, you have to sign up through that the ACL app, so that app.iplayacl.com, which is the web based, not really the app, but we always call it the app because that's what it starts with.
Yeah.
So typically they sign up. So the first right now is like the top 250. So if whoever's in the top 250 in the nation for points can sign up right away, which is sometimes majority of them are pros. So that kind of just opens up the door to the non-pros that can sign up. And then on July, I want to say 5th is the opening for anyone that's a platinum member, has first dibs to signing up. A little bit different on the singles world for ACL on the signups and everything else. It is kind of like a first come first serve, but they have it all in different divisions. So like wherever you are seated, or like whatever your ranking or your division on what your profile says. So like, for example, I'm an advanced player, so I can sign up and it only be in the advanced categories of the ACL. So you have certain days. You have like the ACL competitive, intermediate, and then advanced. So like intermediate's the lowest, competitive, and then advanced. They do have a novice division that is there. They do have that tournament, but it's all just those categories. So if you're an advanced player, you're not going to be playing with the pros. They're in their own category. PDC is in the same thing. PDC now is the new thing that they started this year, and that will have their own category as well. So like in any of the singles, you'll be playing against people in the nation that are in the same division you really are.
Okay, so what if you're a player who hasn't played much ACL at all, and really you don't have much of a ranking, can you still go out to Worlds, and will they place you,
Yes.
or how does that work?
Yeah. So like if you still go out to Worlds, they do accept walk-ins and that stuff or walk-ups. Most of the time they try to, you know, uh, limit that. So like for instance, if you, I think they sign up like the 256 players, right? That's when they go to have it completely full, and then they have like 100 spots for walk-ups. So like if you don't get into that 256, but you still want to go down there and try and get in, you can then go in there and walk in and sign up. I haven't heard of anyone that's ever gotten denied and not been able to play. So that is a good bonus in that kind of sense.
Yeah.
Hey, Tyler, you're talking about the intermediate, or I think it's competitive and advanced are the two divisions below the pro.
Yep.
As a director, is that part of your job to, let's say somebody's playing in competitive and they're winning a lot, is it your job to make them move up to the advanced division?
And that's a great question. You know, we get that a lot for a director wise on my end. I guess the best answer is yes. I mean, we do. So for our software and everything else, we dictate it based on stats, right? So, and I can show you almost every stat that goes out there in all my tournaments I've ran. And if someone does like win a lot of competitive, right? So you have those people that blow away competitive divisions, and then all of a sudden they never want to go up to advanced. Well, it would dictate that on my world of seeing it on the stats per se. So if you, for example, most stats will say that if you're a 7, 8, right? For up here in this area, I guess you should say, it is different in every area for sure. But like 7, 8s to 6, 9 is in that competitive, kind of right in that competitive lane. If someone is shooting like an 8s, low 8s, throughout the like most of the tournament, and they average, you know, in that 7, 9 range, and they do it like two or three tournaments in a row, then I'm definitely gonna like have to do my job and move them up, just because you have to make it fair for everyone below and everyone above, because sometimes even those people that throw in the 8s can win an advanced tournament too, because your advanced are from that 7, 9 to about 8, 8, you know, on that average wise. So it all depends on somehow in the category. So I could say there's a couple players around here that I always get the biggest complaints of, oh, why are they always competitive, or why are they, you know, that. And honestly, I can tell them that it's just any given day for any of those players, you know, because everything I look on their stats wise doesn't dictate that, you know, because I've seen over the last few years of me playing, I've seen a lot of the players that, you know, have that struggle against some players, and they moved up because they just want to get better, and they moved up, and now they could probably, if they moved down, they would blow people away just because they just moved up the competition, got themselves better, played better, got better, and now they're one of the, you know, top players in the States, you know. So I would say that for my way, I've always directed by is by just feel and how I see it, and then how it's dictated with the stats.
And those numbers, Tyler, that you mentioned, just for those who may not be familiar with that, you're saying 8, 7, 6, 9, you're talking about PPRs there, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Points per
Yes.
round. Yeah.
Yep. That would be PPR, points per round. Yep.
Okay, and that's a good question, Al, because that touches on really, I think the biggest difference between the ACL and ACO. ACL, obviously, all their events, there's PPR, whether it's regionals or whatever, and you got PPRs, whereas the ACO does not track PPRs or anything like that at all. And when you ACL, and that's the difference between worlds too, is that ACL, you know, the pros are going to play in their pro division, and you know, there's other tiers obviously below that, whereas ACO, as long as you've played in one regional at some point, if you show up at a regional, you're going to get 12 points, even if you O2 barbecue and you're done. You show up, you can go to worlds and you could beat all the pros and win at ACO. So that is a difference between the ACL and ACO. Some think they like the ACO because of that. ACL obviously is a little more tilted toward the pro level, which is fine. But that is, I think, Tyler, a pretty distinct difference between the two is that an ACO Worlds, Joe Schmo could come in off the street, as long as he won one or played in one regional, could take the whole thing, could be the king of cornhole. Whereas in technically an ACL, it's going to be somebody that qualified as a pro that for that year, right?
Yeah, so like honestly, you don't even have to compete in anything. As long as you have a profile, you can
Right.
almost compete in the ACL. I absolutely agree with that. Um, yeah, I mean that is the beauty of kind of that in general. You know, like when you play doubles, you have to play with someone that is the same category you are. So it's like I can't play with a pro and play in advance. Like you have to find someone that is also an advanced player to then play doubles with.
Right.
I can't just, you know, and that's kind of the beauty of that stuff. A nice cool thing I will say about ACL on being down there is just the mere fact of how much bags you can play in every single day. I mean, if you want to talk about like opportunities, if you want to be tired and like want to make sure you're not going to walk the next few weeks, you know, that's definitely the place to go play bags at. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I could definitely say that one.
Yeah. And again, so we're just singles, what we were talking about there now.
Yep. Yep.
Doubles, I would assume is very similar. You got to play in a partner, like you said, with your own, with your level. But if you're a pro team, you can't have a pro and a non-pro. It's got to be two pros in there. So structured in that way within those different levels, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So like you can't, a pro would go with a pro or a PDC will be with the PDC and then advanced with the advanced. You can't just have an advanced with the PDC or like a intermediate with an advanced or competitive with advanced. It's just structured straight up as though you have to compete. Now, if you have, now you can always play up, right? We always talk about how you can, if you're an intermediate, you can play an advanced. Well, the kicker is if you are trying to play intermediate singles and you have an advanced player, but you want to team up with them, you kind of have to make the choice to either go in one or the other, right? So we can't just all of a sudden say, oh, you're okay to play the intermediate singles and then go play advanced, because we would have to switch your
Sure.
skill level.
Yeah.
And that what gets really hard too. So
If someone walks into the ACL singles, they're not a pro, they can just say, put me at the highest, which is what, advanced, other
Yep.
than pro, that they can
Correct.
just say, I want to play at this level without even, they'll just let them play at that level.
Right. Yeah, and it's all scheduled differently too. So like on the website, if you go to their news or event page, you can find all the news and that'll give the schedule for all the week, because
Yeah.
each day has got its own division in each plate. But yes, you can basically show up and be like, well, I'd like to play an advanced singles or advanced doubles but I have this guy as a partner who is advanced too. So then you guys can just show up and sign up and then you'd be all set to go.
Yeah. Well, again, the ACL Worlds are in Rock Hill, South Carolina, at the headquarters there for ACL, and the ACO is in Branson, Missouri, this year. And another, I think that's kind of unique about the two, also, Tyler, that I find this interesting. And obviously, there's a lot of competition between ACO, ACL. Us as cornhole players, we just play cornhole. We let those guys figure that stuff out.
Absolutely.
But if you're an ACO pro, you can go play at ACL Worlds without ever having to play ACL, and you'll play at that higher competitive level. But if you're an ACL pro, you cannot show up at ACO Worlds. You cannot compete or play at ACO Worlds. So a little bit different in that, how they cross over there.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those things. I do get talked or asked on that a lot. And that is kind of sometimes the hard thing for ACL and ACO. I mean, you can always, it's kind of like that rival in baseball, right? Or that
Sure.
rival in that kind of small town world. You're always going to say, oh, I don't like you in this town, but I'm going to respect your, opinion, so I think that's like the good thing about ACL and ACO. I sometimes you kind of wish, for ACL, even directors ourselves, for my, like now being a conference, I'm no longer able to play in an ACO event because I have to respect the ACL. But I do respect the directors. I mean, they're just, everyone of players and directors are all should be respected. I mean, they put all their work into those stuff just as much as we put our work in our stuff. So yeah, so I totally understand, some concerns with that side, and I can totally understand, because you had a couple ACO pros from ACO pros last year that went into ACL this year. So that's always kind of interesting to see the transition on where they sit with everyone on the ACL level. I mean, I'm definitely not gonna I'm not gonna talk about like who's the better of the two, because then that would get me in trouble by
We'll leave
any
that
means,
for a
but
later Cornhole Insider podcast that is going to list. And my son told me not to do it, but I'm going to list the top 25 players in the world. And I'm going to wait till after Worlds are over, so I don't have to see anybody when I do that.
That's
But
probably a better way to go about
that'll
it.
be a good conversation piece, nonetheless.
Absolutely.
So
We're just
ACL,
looking for ratings.
yeah, that's
Oh,
all.
I
That's
can
right.
imagine.
I'm
I'm
just like
totally with
any.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
talk about ACL Worlds. Other than singles, doubles, I know there's women's and there's others. Are there a lot of other different categories at ACL Worlds also?
Oh yeah. So ACL Worlds. So it's kind of cool. All right. So you could, so like I think competitive, or I think it's novice or intermediate. I think both. I think it's novice, intermediate, and competitive all kind of start Monday, Tuesday on the start of ACL Worlds. But that Monday, Tuesday is also the start of the HQ headquarters for ACL. And what is cool about that place is that they open that up to do sit and goes. If you guys don't know what sit and goes are, a lot of people sometimes know, but it's 16 players, blind draw. It's single elimination, $10.
Right.
Top two teams get 75% of the pot. So basically
Keeps you
you
playing.
go into that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You go
Yeah.
into the HQ and there's like maybe 100, there's 12, I think 12 or 14 sets in the room. Really cool place. There's a bar right there. And you have this one guy who basically just signs the name in, draw cards, and then you match up with a team and they send you off the two boards, and then you're playing from pretty much 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Just constantly playing. And then if you want to go after hours, after everything's all shut down, some hotels have directors that will bring boards down and then just set up right in the parking lot to then do more tournaments. So like some people I've had, or I myself has done, is when you wake up at 9 o'clock, you're playing from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 in the morning. And you're just playing straight up blind draws and straight up singles, straight up doubles. It's just all sorts of fun. Yeah. So there's a lot of categories. Yeah, you have co-ed, you have women's singles, women's doubles. You do have, like I said, the singles and doubles like the normal. And then they have a director's tournament too, a director's blind draw as well. So if you're a director of the ACL, they do a kind of like a free director's tournament, which add $1,000 to it. Kind of like a thank you for all the guys that do directing.
Nice.
So now this year are they doing the teams at the Worlds this year too? They
are. I honestly have no idea how they're gonna do that. I've known, the team things is really cool, right? I'll be honest, like the team thing is really cool from an outsider, right? So you get to see all these teams that get a draft and they get drafted, and then you get to see and watch these guys. But a lot of the pros kind of like up in the air on like, it's cool to be matched with random people that you don't get to play with, right? And you get to be a team together, but they don't really get any benefit from it, right? They only get like the just kind of like who's the better drafter, kind of like the, what would I say, bragging rights.
Yeah,
they would be like the bragging rights of the next year. I'm hoping the ACL will come out with something where it make it a little bit more interesting, like adding, they'll more likely give trophies to it, but like, adding a little bit more of an incentive. That would be kind of a cool thing, like free memberships for all the players that end up being, that carry on to the following year. Because as pros, you still got to pay like $1,000 to be a pro. That pays for all your stuff or whatever. But right. It would be neat to have something of that sort. Yeah. So then it makes it worthwhile for that team makers or team event.
Well, there is there are pro incentives at both of these too. I know the ACO Obviously, they have pros from the top 80 players from the year, but also at the ACO Worlds, if you finish in the top 96 in singles, you are automatically a pro. If you haven't already qualified. So that's a nice incentive for people basically to walk in that they don't even have to have played many regionals or anything, that they could become an ACO pro. And it's the same for the ACL at the end. You were telling me before we went on the air, Tyler, that they wrap up the whole event on that Sunday with a chance for that ACL pro qualifier. And we saw last year several people, even from our area, from Iowa and such, who made it on those pro qualifiers and are having a lot of fun being a pro. So that's kind of a nice incentive for people to go out and play in that chance that if they finish in the top, whatever it is, they could be a pro.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that big Sunday event. Absolutely. It's a singles rounders. So if you have never played in an ACL single or rounders, a lot of people ask me the question, what is it? And the answer is it's a group of everyone playing against everyone. So how it works is that you play the same record of another team. So if you start the first game you play against is totally random. So it's 100% shuffled across the board and you play someone. And then if you win that game, you become 1-0. So the next match, you're going to play someone else that's 1-0. And then the next match will be either 2-0 or a 1-1. And that's the matchups. And it'll keep on carrying. Basically, from what I seen from the last year's event and that stuff, it was like whoever ended up being 5-2 moved on to then playing a bracket play that then determined it was like a bracket play, and if you won their first two games or I think it was either first two or your first game, either or, it depends on how you ranked on the 5-2 record. You would end up automatically becoming a pro for that following year or getting a chance for it. Now, if you go 6-0 or 6-1, if you go, I totally screwed this up. So if you're
It's all right.
So it's 6 rounds. If you're 4-2, you go into a bracket play, right?
Mhm.
So then if you are 6-1, you'll end up, I think you automatically become a pro, and whoever is the 7-0 also automatically becomes a pro, if I recall. It's either like a 7-0 that automatically become pro, and a 6-1 and the 4-2, or 6-1 and the 5-2 will play in a bracket play. I think it's that.
Yeah, it's a nice, it's an awesome opportunity for high level players. All the pros that are already pros are shoved aside, and you get to duke it out with everybody who's looking to become a pro. So I think that's awesome, and I like what the ACO does too, giving people who maybe just didn't have the whatever, the time or the travel, the money to get to events, they have a chance to qualify as a pro. So there's a lot of positive things on both sides. And of course, the big thing that ACL has going for it right now is that, the bait, the ESPN bait, the CBS Sports bait. You hear a lot of people talk about that. These are men and women playing this sport, Tyler, that used to be are still athletes, but thrived, most of them, at some athletic level when they were younger or whatever it is. And that little bait out there of making the big broadcast is pretty cool.
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that probably escalated the sport to new levels. Like now you could probably say that there's a lot more players that are looking at playing in an ACO or an ACL, just the mere fact that now you're watching it and seeing it on a broadcast. Now you used to go out on the golf course and hit a birdie and you're thinking, I'm going to go to PGA, because it was there and you watched it and you thought you'd shoot as well as you did, or I'm going to be the next Tiger Woods. And now you're looking at it to where you can play cornhole or you're watching it on TV and these guys are making 4-baggers. And now your next thought is I'm going to be a Noah Wooten, or I'm going to be a Matt Guy, or I'm going to be, any of these guys are out there that, have a shot. So like you said, anyone can play, anyone can win. Like the next upcoming star they talk about all the time is like Alex Hicks, young kid, 12 years old.
Yeah.
He'll, once he hits that 18 and able to go on broadcast, he's going to be the next one that's going to be to look at. Like, who is this guy, or what's going to happen with him? Like You know, you see like, you know, your son Blake, you know, like there's Joel, you guys like playing over there. I mean, there's a lot of players out there that have every opportunity as anyone else. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of all this sport. Is the cool thing is that you get to watch. To me, I get to watch, sit back and watch you guys, you know, and idolize what you guys can do and how you guys can play.
Someday I want to see Al Baghdadi on a broadcast just to see if they can fit his whole name on the screen. Al Bag Desert Storm Baghdadi Murphy. They won't be able to fit it on there, I don't think, Al.
Probably not. There's probably a good chance that won't happen.
Well, I
It'd
tell
probably
you,
be some like hyphenated, like ABBACID.
some
And then it'll
politically
just be
correct term or something.
right.
But you know what, the way this sport has gone crazy just in the last couple of years, Tyler, in a year or two from now, nothing at all will surprise me. And just in a short couple of years, we've gone from people saying, wouldn't it be funny if we could actually make a career out of this, you know, and now we got guys playing bags as their job, as their career, on TV, 6-figure contracts. And this has all just happened in the snap of a finger in the last year or two.
Oh, absolutely. I was actually, you know, it's funny is like I was down. So Julie, my fiance, Julie Christensen, she's at PDC. So we were down in Myrtle Beach, and right before Matt Guy and Jamie Graham got the Bud Light sponsor, and they talked about, you know, how cool it is that that's becoming the big thing. You know, you see a lot of these players that are really good and showing what their talents are, having that ability. And that's kind of sometimes of the beauty too. If you really work at it, like I've kind of watched, and the nice thing about being the traveling to places like this is get to see those guys and get the insight on how they did it. You know, they talk about, you know, getting the insight and talking to them like, hey, how did you get to that level? You know, how do you ask like Fire Cornhole or Bud Light or I'm just Taco Bell, Sarah Cassidy's and Taco Bell. Like, how did they end up getting these kind of big name places that, you know, and it's kind of cool getting that insight. That'd be another conversation another day. But yeah, I mean, it's the neatest thing in the world. Anything I've kind of learned and found out that there's almost anything can be brought to you if you really chose to, and how you can go about it. You know, it's fairly neat. Almost any player, if they work at it and how you talk about it, can get sponsored. So it's kind of a neat showing for everyone. And it's kind of cool too, because you think about it, like if you ever played slow pitch softball, or if you've been in any of the sports, everyone gets sponsors to, you know, pay for equipment or help, you know, get to the next area, or little leagues and doing sponsorships like that. Cornhole is now becoming that kind of sport. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, we
About
saw
going and making travels.
Yeah, we saw it with ACL and all the bags, of course, the stamp bags, and now ACO is going to be requiring stamp bags. And there's over 50 companies that have jumped on board to be ACO stamp bags, which has allowed a lot of sponsorship opportunities now for ACO players that were not there before. And we're just seeing it grow, you know, and like we said, Tyler, I know you're an ACL director and you promote ACL, but all of us benefit when this sport grows. ACL, ACO, our local tournaments benefit, our local charities benefit, and chances for people to win, you know, maybe significant prize money at local tournaments. It benefits all of us when it comes right down to it.
Absolutely. You know, I could say one thing I would say about the stamps on both sides, right? For directors, and this is just based on just directors itself, it's nice having a stamp, just because now we don't have to worry about someone just, you know, showing up with corn bags or like showing up randomly and then dusting up the boards or getting something. You know, it's nice to be able to not have to worry about some things like that, you know. And ACO actually was stamped before ACL started stamping, you know. So ACO had their own like 3 types of bags, wasn't it, in the very beginning?
Yeah.
Probably, I think they only had the ACO bags, and then they moved to Reynolds, and then they had Reynolds with, I think, Ultra or Vipers. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think so.
But
Al,
Ultra.
it always confuses me, Al, when they have in those tournaments must be ACL, ACO certified bags, no corn bags. I'm thinking to myself, who's gaining an advantage by throwing a Bago bag from Walmart or corn bags? I'm thinking, why is this an advantage to have those bags? I don't know if it's just because it'll damage the board or leave resin on it, or if
Right.
there'll be a mouse jumping out of it from sitting in the barn. I'm not sure what the advantage is. So
Well, we still laugh when you go to Walmart and see ESPN on the bag itself, you know, like, so you just kind of just giggle, you know, for us, that you guys and us that play a lot and go and buy those kind of bag, or buy like the, you know, any kind of bag out there that's going to be more resin filled, you just laugh and giggle at those things. Cause I remember going into Dick's Sporting Goods and be like, oh my God, I got a fast and slow side bag, you know, this is the coolest thing ever. And then now I'm just like, oh man, I was an idiot. Like,
Yeah.
all right. Well, the both ACL, ACO seasons winding down with their Worlds. ACO the last weekend of July, ACL the first week long of August. So exciting times for people who are playing in them, Tyler, or watching. They can watch on TV, they can watch online. I tell you what, that has added a lot too, because just the average person who's kind of getting into the game, you know, there's so many live streams now of these events that makes it a lot of fun for people who can't be there.
yeah, if you speaking of that, you know, if I giggle that, so if anyone knows the Pro Tornado, if you don't know him, all you got to do is add him on Facebook and you'll get enough feeds to see that he's live a lot. So, I mean, that guy is on Facebook Live about, oof, at least 3 or 4 times a day. I think he went into Facebook jail once, and I think that was almost like gray hair started coming out instantly. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. I think this year for the ACL, I know in a few of their opens, they've had 4 live feeds going at one time, you know, and these pros are even coming out with more live feeds, and they're doing that ALCN, so you can watch it on their app. They have an ACL app where you can watch like more TV side or more other episodes and everything else they've had on there.
Yep.
So I think they're going to probably be increasing that. I haven't heard any new news on that, but I'm more likely, after seeing all these opens with them, I'm guessing they're going to kind of open that door too. So then now you're able to play, maybe even watch competitive players more often, or like people you don't get to see on those kind of live feeds. I'm more likely going to probably see that more and more as it goes on. So it gets everyone that can watch anyone play. So one other note I forgot to tell you or mention, and I don't know if this was ever talked about, after that qualifier, you are able to put in a application to become a pro. So like if you played well throughout the entire year, but you couldn't go to Worlds, if you have a good resume, you could put an application in and they'll look at it and give it a possibility of you becoming a pro anyways.
Right. Right.
That's something out there for other players too, you know, like anyone that, you know, is their average Joe. Let's say, for instance, they played in, I don't know, we'll just say like Missouri, or if they're in Idaho that won the Idaho State or Missouri State tournaments, but they just got stuck in all their lifestyle and too busy to go down. You know, you can always put an application in and they can look at it and see like any of the players are. That's why they kind of made the P2C division, is for those kind of players. Like they question mark, they had 62 players that they were up in the air, and they're like, hey, if we can't make them a pro, let's just see how they act as a PDC pro.
Sure.
And then they'll test it out. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to PDC players after this year. And that's what's kind of the beauty on my side with having Julie being a PDC, is I get to see the inside of that. But I mean, I'm guessing the ACL is going to do something good for those players as well.
Yeah, it's pro development. What is it? What does it see? Yeah.
Cup. Yeah, Pro Development Cup.
Pro development.
You know, like I'm surprised they didn't call it PDP, like Pro Development Program, but
Yeah.
I think they wanted to go the Pro Development Cup because it's going to be like a power of the, you know, like semi-pros, I guess you would say. But
Sure. And that is one difference also, ACL, ACO, is that ACL does have that flexibility to accept people based on, you know, different criteria, where the ACO is cut and dry. I mean, either you do make it during the regular season, or you don't. And then you have to either you do or you don't. There's really no question. There's no applying. This is the pro status. So it's a little bit different between the two.
So Tyler, something that I never hear much about is once you become a pro, are you a pro for 1 year or 2 years? And what does it take to keep your pro status?
So that is a very good question as well. So you are a pro basically for the whole year. And then it's up to your discretion to carry it, right? So to put all the pros on a high level, you have to kind of just maintain that high level. So if you go to the national events and that stuff, and they take 3 out of the 4 national events. So like this upcoming weekend is the last event of all the nationals. And if you, and it bases itself by points, right? So if you win, it's just like a regional, right? Where you get 100 points if you're an advanced player and you win the advance. And it's the same concept as what they do for the national events. So all these pros, the 256 pros go into, I think it's like, is it 4? Yeah, four different brackets, A, B, C, and D. And they all play out on 64 players or 64 team brackets, and they play it out. Now, if you go so far, you get so many points. And then that will generate to being where your ranking is based on everyone else in the pros. So now if you're in the top half, I want to say it's the top half, top 100. Sorry, it's the top 100 in the singles. If you're in the top 100, you're automatically going to be pro next year. And the doubles, if you're in the top 50, you're going to be a pro for following year. Because like it's 120, it's 123. Yeah, something like that. 122 players or teams that are in the doubles. So if you're in the top 50, which is almost half, in the doubles side of it, your partner could be in the top 50, right, of singles, and you're not in the top 100 at all in the singles. You're still going to be pro because you're in the top 50, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and that's how you maintain it. Now,
yeah.
I will say that it's probably a little bit easier on a pro when they put an application in to become a pro following year, because you have the criteria of where you're at as a pro, if that makes sense, from the previous year. Because I mean, you got to think about it. You're playing against, as they would say, the best of the best, so like you're always playing in that kind of high category. So if you were just barely out, you could probably put an application in and you'd probably more likely, become a pro the following year. So like Derek King is a good example of a high name pro that was outside of the top 100 and outside of the top 50. And he didn't even play in the qualifier. He put his application in just because he had a good enough resume and that he got to maintain his pro. So like sometimes it's a good things and sometimes it's the bad things. I could also name a few other pros that didn't make to being a pro, and are PDC or not pro at all.
Yeah.
So
and
it's kind of one of those things. Yeah, go ahead.
And it's a commitment. I mean, for people who don't know, I mean, if you become a pro, that's the good news. And now the bad news is you got to be able to afford it. You got to be able to work around your schedule, because nobody jumps into a 6-figure just because you become a pro doesn't mean you have sponsors lined up at your doorstep. So that's a struggle that a high percentage of the players have, is getting to picking to where they want to go. Because we know with the cost of gas and airline flights, a lot of players are struggling to make it work. So it's a grind, and we salute all those players because they're sacrificing a lot. Families are sacrificing a lot for them to chase a dream.
Oh, 100%. That is the toughest thing. That is probably the toughest thing for a lot of players to actually kind of get the concept to. You're right. I mean, there's no easy thing to say about travel, especially these days. And you just, Joel, you just traveled 7 hours to, South Dakota for, just like a regular tournament. Just imagine, having to drive 15 to 25 just to maintain like a national tournament, or, fly into these places. Sometimes it's just not, the expenses just not there. Like this weekend's in Chicago, and we're driving to Chicago. I mean, because it's only about 9 hours away. But I mean, some players are coming from Florida, so it's definitely a commitment, like Tornado had a great post. I always kind of bring up Tornado because he's the only one that kind of like opens up everything.
And
It's
he's
a
always
funny
posting
story.
too. So
He is
a
always
lot to
posting.
say.
Oh gosh, I can talk to about him, and he's a great guy. Lady Tornado and Tornado, if they ever watch this podcast, you guys are awesome. Either way, but these guys, like they're great people. They show up. And Lady Tornado is like a local director and has like she's like 2,500 rounds of tournament play. I mean, it's great to have some of these stats. You get to see how many of these directors like run tournaments. It's crazy. But the cool thing is like he plays in all these tournaments and talks about how you can commit the commitments, and maybe I'll probably like maybe send you that post of what he said, but it's really like right defined to what he is a pro and the commitments of him traveling because he comes from like New York area, Boston area. So like traveling across the coast, going from California to there, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you have to commit and the amount of time you put in to be there too. And you would know that, Joel, and you and Blake, on just the practicing alone, the being at that level is not something you can just wake up out of bed and just go and throw a bag. If you don't play bags for 2 to 3 weeks and then go in to play bags the next day, it's not like something like you can do that.
Yeah, we've been talking with Tyler Earls, who is the ACL director from South Dakota. We thank you, Tyler, for taking time to join us. Exciting time for cornhole in general, and double exciting having the ACO and ACL Worlds in back-to-back weeks. My son is going to be at both of them. I'm going to be at the ACO with him. Then he's flying out to go to the ACL World. So 2 weeks of bags for a 20-year-old college kid. That's a dream come true right there. So
That's right.
I'm gonna let him go the second week because I'm gonna need to nap a little bit after that first week, so I'm just gonna let him go out there.
Yeah, you
So,
will.
all right, Tyler, we appreciate the time, and we look forward to that to your area growing out even more, and hopefully we can get out to the Corn Palace at some point, and maybe play a little bags ACL style with you guys out here in the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping to have that one. I'm crossing my fingers for April this time and not have it in graduation season. That's just kind of a bummer for me, but I will I'll be posting on that. I run the Corn Palace Cornhole page. If anyone wants to go on there and follow that. Joel, Alan, you guys have been great. I appreciate you guys having me on here and talking about ACO Worlds and the ACL Worlds. They're great sports, great companies. And I hope the best for you during the week, and I hope the best for you guys out there playing well and staying cool.
All right, Tyler, be well. Thank you.
Thanks,
for your
Tyler.
time.
Thanks, you guys. You guys have a good one.
You betcha. All right, Al Baghdadi, we got a busy couple weeks coming up here. I know in our area, there's just so many tournaments going on.
Yeah.
My gosh. I mean, your opportunity to throw bags close to home is it's pretty good, especially here in northern Wisconsin. And we don't have many people up here, and there's still tournaments everywhere, right?
Yeah, there's every little town that has a festival now is having a tournament. So there's pretty much every Saturday and Sunday you can find somewhere to throw if you want.
Yeah, I think we counted the 4th of July weekend, and there's actually like 5 tournaments within like an hour of where we live anyway. So it's pretty crazy. There's a big tournament coming up in Stevens Point next weekend, and Channing, Michigan has a real big one going on also. And Amherst, how about the Portage County Fair one? They have like $1,500 added to their event at the Portage County Fair.
What's the date on that one, Joel?
That's the 17th of July, I believe, is what that one is, I believe. So yeah,
Sunday?
check out the Northern Wisconsin Cornhole Facebook page. Al, you do a good job of trying to put stuff on there. If people have tournaments going on, Minnesota, Wisconsin, be sure to share it on our Northern Wisconsin page, because our events page, I think, is about as thorough as you're going to find.
Yeah, we can't forget the Wolf's Den one coming up on July 9th and 10th, I believe.
Money Mike would have us if we don't mention that. Sunday, July 10th, doubles is guaranteed $750. There will be singles on Saturday, special room rates. So check out the events page on Northern Wisconsin Cornhole. Great Northern, the Wolf's Den and the Great Northern Motel have probably been the biggest supporters of Northern Wisconsin Cornhole, and just them letting us throw there, putting on tournaments, letting us throw at the lanes in Park Falls, which they also own. So if it's open, they've never said no.
I also would like to give a shout out to friend of the show, Andrew Cox, whose birthday is today.
All right, Andrew. What? Oh, it's his birthday. Okay, we'll let him have his moment. All right, Andrew's a blast. I love having tournaments when Andrew is there. All right, out, Mr. Baghdadi. We'll check in with you again soon. I want to thank Ruthless Bags, State Farms, for sponsoring me and Blake as we venture out here and travel all over the country here in the next couple of weeks. Ruthlessbags.com. Put in Karnik 2022. They'll give you 10% off of your purchase of those Ruthless bags, which Blake and I we've weaned ourselves, and we are officially 100% ruthless now. I don't even know where my other bags are now. So we're finally there.
And don't forget, go to the YouTube page and subscribe.
Please hit subscribe. We now have 4 and going on 5 of our podcasts, this and the Cornhole strategy ones, that have over 1,000 views. We are over 225 subscribers. It's growing. So yeah, the only thing we ask, Al, is just hit subscribe. It's free. If you don't have an account, you might need to create one. And that way, whenever we post a video like this, you'll just get a little notification that there's one available. So, all right. Have a happy 4th of July. Try not to blow up anything that shouldn't be blown up, Mr. Al Baghdadi, okay?
Make sure you light the fireworks with your non-throwing hand.
All right. Good advice. Thank you, Al. See you later, everybody. Talk to you next week.